emergency in the city onto this. And the entire search is to be coordinated through this office. And the captain is supposed to say, yes, sir. So they cut that out. I agree. It didn't need to be in there.
Right.
Hassline did not need to say they're to be taken alive. Hassline already knows that. The president told him to do it, and he's pissed. He didn't need to reiterate that. So they shot it specifically with Clark, Mr. President, and puts the phone down. Mm-hmm. And that's a great place to end it.
So while we were bemoaning that shot, and you were saying that, I also wanted to look up our cinematographer was Joseph F. Baroque. Mostly, and that might be Biroc. It's Biroc. I'm not sure. Baroche. I don't know how to say that. The dude had some chops. Shot The Towering Inferno, Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, which I will beg everyone, if you've not seen that, that is such a juicy piece of camp that you've got to watch. And he shot Airplane. I mean, can we go without reverence for the man when he shot Airplane?
Well, that one, who's doing Airplane by minute? I want to go watch that.
Oh, that's true.
Who's doing Zucker Brothers by the minute?
Wow, maybe I think I have a new podcast for you, Richard.
All right, cool.
But I bring that up because I'm always curious in these situations when we talk about these things. Okay, this person, most of the film type stuff, these were people that were part of the factory system that churned stuff out. Mm-hmm. So the guy shot some really good stuff. But again, I think that goes to the fact that they're trying to crank as fast as they can.
Trying to get a 90-minute movie.
Yeah, they probably shot this on the same day that they shot the drug interrogation scenes, or the same week. It's the same setup, and they probably just got to the point where it's like, the camera's here. If we just swung around and got it here.
Well, even the rest of this minute, on some level, there's movement that happens in a few minutes with military vehicles, and I'm like, man, they shot this just for the editor, but they shot it really quickly. It makes sense, but it didn't really need to be there.
I agree with that, too.
I have a feeling that they locked off a camera and said, all right, let's shoot cars going out. Let's shoot cars coming in. Let's do one car in, one car out. Yeah.
So
I have those same notes. Yeah. We'll get to that.
Just so you know, when Hassline says, quiet, Mr. President, and hangs up the phone, the script actually goes to the next scene, which we actually just saw in the minutes before. So when Cornelius says, I'm going back to the camp to find Lewis, I only lost my temper with the boy. It's better now I can walk. They may punish us, but at least the baby will be born. Even though that happened in the minutes earlier, this was actually, Dane had this coming after this moment.
Okay.
Which would have made it a little more serious because now we know that they'd be kept alive. But I like it being moved forward because then we didn't know that before.
I agree, and it's funny that you bring that up because I think even in the minutes for this week, there were times where I kind of wondered if things weren't originally put together in a different manner because it felt like they were delaying information or inserting information that didn't need to get to this place.
They were. I mean, when he says, "Yeah, I didn't injure the boy." At this point, Hassline's told Dixon to go kill them. Like they've been killed. We got to get them. Whatever. If that scene had happened after the conversation where the president says, "Don't kill them, take them alive," it wouldn't have had the same impact for sure.
Yeah. So after we get through much of that, we do get to the shots we're talking about with the conversation. And you heard it when you listened to the minute. You got a lot of driving Jeeps. The big thing I even found was that it's sloppy, boring editing because instead of simply cutting in the midst of action.
Yeah, because it doesn't look like the base is on any sort of urgency because somebody's been murdered. Yeah, all right, trucks are driving out now.
This movie has been so smart. Like when we talked about Beneath and I went on and on how you can shoot things to make them seem even more urgent, where you could go, your cameras are low and you just have feet walking by. Well, you remember at the first this movie, they did some of that kind of stuff where Jeeps turned into frame and it made it feel like they had a bigger military presence probably than they did. In this situation, there is so little urgency because if you really think about what the Jeep's pulling out is trying to show us, yes, they're on alert, but at the end, the final shot or the final part of that shot to me is the only thing of relevance when it shows the back of the truck is full of military personnel that are now going out. That is what's important.
Yeah, it'd have been if you see them loading onto the truck and then the tires squealing as they head out and stuff like that, it gives it more urgency than just, all right, make sure they're well lit so you can see the back of the truck.
You could undercut the sound of, at the end of the previous scene, you could have the sound of cars.
Or whatever,
yeah, and then it cuts to a Jeep almost going right by camera. Something like that would have put us in the urgency of the scene instead of being such a passive observer.
This isn't a drill, boys.
Right.
This is a real thing.
So for the listening audience, after Hassline hangs up, we go to an exterior shot of Camp 11 at night. The gates open, one Jeep and two convoys pull out. as the convoys, we kind of get a back shot on one of the convoys where we see military personnel inside. And that's what we're talking about. There's no need for all of that. And again, I think they just wanted, is it called? They just wanted the shot. They just wanted it for the editor to have. It was unnecessary. According to Dane's script, it says, search convoy tearing out through Camp Gate, 2-6 buys with Marines preceded by captain in Jeep. That was his only instruction for this. The next thing we get is, from Dane, Stevie's station wagon approaching camp area. Well, I love that he specified station wagon. On the first arm of a U-bend in the winding highway, she meets the convoy coming from the opposite direction. Captain Jeep swerves across to trap and halt her. Now that does not happen. What we do see is the Jeep and the convoy passing through some tree line as they're riding on a road. We see a paved road that Dr. Branton is coming up on. We see the Jeeps pull onto the paved road, and we see them we see Stevie pull up with her headlights. She slows with the military personnel as they slow down at the same time. There's no tensity. Nothing intense at this moment that Dane wanted. He's just kind of casually stopping. Now she knows that she's approaching a military base.
She's got to stop.
So she was probably already aware that there was going to be something to cause her to pull down, and that's where you hear the audio of the what do they call him, lieutenant or officer, telling her, he recognizes her.
He calls her Dr. Branson.
Yeah. Right. Oh, miss.
Not Stevie.
Oh, miss, you lost. Oh, it's Dr. Branton. Better be careful, ma'am. There's been a murder. The monkeys have killed their orderly and escaped. So, I mean,
I started getting Quincy there. There's been a murder.
his accent was so strong that you wonder if it was a choice.
I think it's more a choice of, hey, we got to fill this role.
And that's just the guy they picked it. He lives in California. He's got that accent.
Yeah, come on, guys.
Well, you go back to, we had the dude that I picked on so much in the first film that, was one of the gorillas and just sort of talked like this. And he seemed, and literally you went and looked, and he was a guy that had a long career, but he did start as a mechanic, and he did have that very everyman kind of sound.
Gotcha.
I think things like this they're just pushing. And I mentioned to you guys when we were getting ready for this that I took Abby last night and made her watch the classic musical Hair. And at the very end of that, I really did think of this scene because if you've not seen it, at the very end, friends, the hippie friends try to break their friend who's in the military out of a base so he can have a couple of hours with friends. So they're driving through military gates. And it had that feeling of, I bet this was all shot in one day, but they did it so beautifully to where it was, here's one location, but let's pop the camera in slightly different manners. And also, the more you put them up on the military personnel, it conveys that, this is a set structure. And it actually, in this moment with Stevie, if we had been a little bit more on the man, putting a hand out, that's oppressive feeling. And I lack that in these scenes where there's really a military presence that's controlling it.
Well, think about this particular moment. Stevie,
the guard should have had a gun out or something.
Something.
Yeah.
Think about this moment. Stevie is driving to the base specifically because Dixon has to tell them that they can't keep the baby and they have to be sterilized.
Okay.
Dixon thinks they're still on the base. They haven't escaped?
Brenton does not know that they've escaped. Brenton does not know that the orderly is dead up to this point. She's driving specifically to support Dixon while he tells bad news to Zero and Cornelius. So this, when she kind of surprisingly goes, what? It's a shock to her. This is new information for her.
Right. So where does this minute end?
With right before we pan over to the shot of
Corny.
Okay. But yeah, it's with her saying she doesn't know what's going on.
Okay.
So yeah, basically it ends with her saying, being given orders to find them. He kind of gives her a warning: drive carefully, Dr. Bratton. There'll be a lot of vehicles in the area tonight. What I find interesting about this moment is that it was not scripted.
Oh, really?
This was added. Basically, he says, "You lost, miss. Oh, it's you, Dr. Branton. Better be careful, ma'am. There's been a murder. The monkeys have killed and the orderlies have escaped."
Branton can't believe it.
And then that would have ended right there. There was no other dialogue. It basically is, he drives off, she does a U-turn, she bumps into Cornelius, which is in the next minute. It's very odd. They really needed this extra stuff, so this must have been written out at that moment. The what? I don't believe it. How did it happen?
I always wonder if that's not the actors going to the director and saying, "Hey,
you got to fill this in."
Yeah, what I'm saying here doesn't make sense for what I'm about to do. And that, that's where part of the collaborative nature on set can happen. And that is kind of the magic of it. So good catch on that.
But I mean, it's there's nothing wrong with the dialogue. What? I don't believe it. How did it happen? I don't know. They've killed their orderly.
Right.
Like he's giving her very important information, and this is one of those things where we know what happened, but she needs it as a character.
Right.
And it completes this moment because it wasn't. They've escaped. Cool. What's going on there?
I don't want to beat her up, and I know that she went on to a very long career, but are her line readings incredibly flat, or is it just me?
I don't
Everything
think
about her is just sort of, the nonplussed and blah, blah.
I think that's who she's expected to be. I don't think
Maybe.
she's not supposed to be anything as sport.
she's a woman in the 70s.
As strong,
she has
as,
no
strong
agency.
as strong of a role as Zira has taken in this movie, they did not give anything to Dr. Branton.
They didn't, and I guess I long for that because she doesn't immediately come off as a stupid secondary character. She's a doctor. She's involved in things, but every time they turn to her, it's very...
She's just taking the place of Nova. That's all.
That's a good point.
I almost would have rather her and Dixon change places.
I agree.
Much would have rather seen her in that
if
role.
If they made it today, it probably would be switched up like that, where the female has more agency because she's taking care of another pregnant person.
Right.
Not to make it all matronly and everything, but she would be more aware of what's going on. Wait,
well, this is 70. This is 71. We're starting the ERA.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
this is
we're
super important.
a
Right
couple
now.
years away from Roe versus Wade and all that.
And I think that no matter what, if you put, it would have been an interesting dynamic if it had been the relationship between two women instead of Dixon. I think that just would have been, especially with the theme that is coming of the impending baby. No matter what, even as a father, I understood the process by which, my wife went through delivering our child. I was there for that, but still that commonality of women.
But you think
that would have been a beautiful theme in this.
But I mean, this is the era though, right? I mean, It would have been an amazing theme, but you look at this era, we fast forward 6 years and we've got Leia, who's got 3 lines in Star Wars, and she's the only female character, right? Something ridiculous like that.
Oh, she's got more than 3 lines.
She got more than 3 lines.
Okay, she got 10 lines.
I recognize your foul stench when I brought on board.
But I know this walking carpet out of my way. Sean and I are going to go through every layout.
This idea that women really just did not have that kind of a role in a movie that was written and directed and produced by men. And it wasn't that it was...
And is the first franchise of sorts. Yes, you're absolutely right.
It wasn't like I may be wrong, but it wasn't like some intentional slight. It's just, it was a man's movie. This is how we write this, and she's just there to do these things.
I don't think anything...
The fact that Zira is that strong is amazing. That's unique.
Totally agree with you. And I don't think it's any intentional slight. I mean, you're looking at the films, that Jane Fonda would star in just a few years later that would revolutionize how women were portrayed. There were Jenna Rollins, all these wonderful actresses of the 70s were about to break the barriers. I just wish they had done it. Right. Because it would have been really a sweet connection.
Well, in this movie, the series of movies specifically loves to talk about politics.
Absolutely.
And this was a perfect moment to insert that with the elevation of this particular character,
right?
Particularly as strong as Zira is. I mean, it would have been nice to see. I mean, this is kind of Zira's movie on some level to me.
But in some ways, that's almost like the films of just a few years ago. And I've tapped into, because we're in the middle of the Me Too movement. The films of just a few years ago seem out of sync with today's truth. And were you to make those films now, you would insert the Me Too type behavior into it, or it's the point of not having it there as the point of the film. So I think they were just, to your point, were just on that cusp of the women's lib type movement that would come into art like this.
I think it may be, I think we've talked about this surely in an in-between moment at some point, but there is this level of yesterday's feminist heroes are no longer heroes in terms of what their thought process and policy. We've moved so much further along that they're no longer as radical as they are. The generation now looks back on some of these characters and actors and writers as that would have been feminist heroes at the time, and they're like, no, that's kind of outdated. We would not do that anymore. We're a little more this direction, right?
Boy, that may be an in-between discussion too, because I had something to say. Then I just don't want to go down the rabbit hole. I know everybody's here for Minute of the Apes.
Write it down.
All right. Does anybody else have anything for that one?
No, that's it for me.
I think that's going to be a 30-minute episode on 1 minute. That was a hell of a discussion.
Is that good?
Yeah, sure, it's great.
Why not?
Even so much so I'm not going to push anything. I'm just going to say, hey, we'll see you tomorrow. I'm Todd for Rich and Sean. Everybody have a good one.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.